Well, welcome to Holy Thursday, and this is a day, if you've wanted to attend church this morning, you'll find, hey, there's no Mass this morning. You might even find the church locked, and the reason being is oftentimes you may lock the church when there is no Mass so that people don't come in expecting Mass. Say, hey, where's the priest? He's oversleeping. Why isn't there Mass? Well, there's no Mass on this morning, tomorrow morning, or Saturday morning. So do keep that in mind. Some parishes will do morning prayer, and that's an option that some parishes do. But there is Mass today. There's two kinds of Masses today, but there's no Mass as far as a regular daily Mass. So what if my priest makes an exception? He actually can't, because there isn't even prayers for daily Mass today. So just do know that. There is no Mass this morning. So, like I said, when you go to church and say, hey, why is the church locked? Where's the priest? Wake him up. Nope, sorry, no Mass today. No Mass this morning, no regular daily Mass. There's Mass today. No, there's two kinds of Masses today. One, which in some dioceses is actually celebrated on Tuesday, but it's technically supposed to be done today. It's called the Chrism Mass, and this is the Mass where the bishop, there are two things that happen. The bishop blesses all the holy oil for the entire year, in theory. I mean, obviously, if he runs out, you can get more holy oil. So do know that he can bless some more. So don't worry. Oh, what if he runs out? No, he just blesses more. But this is essentially the day, and it's done at the cathedral or someplace designated as the cathedral. There's sometimes something called the proto-cathedral, and that's actually like the designated cathedral when you need one. But a cathedral actually doesn't necessarily mean a huge church. Cathedral means nothing more is where the bishop's chair is. It comes from the Latin word cathedra, that's where the bishop's chair is. And if you go into a cathedral, you'll see a special chair, usually with the bishop's coat of arms on it, and that's officially the bishop's chair, and that's where the cathedral is. By the way, I do believe, I could be wrong here, is cathedrals are supposed to be built to be like a cross. I could be wrong on that, but generally they are. And I used to, when I was at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross in Boston, I used to always have a scavenger hunt, which like go out and find these things in the cathedral. And one of them is find the largest cross in New England. And people would be looking around. Finally, someone says, we're standing in it. And I said, yes, you are. So anyway, that's the cathedral. And this is where they're going to bless all the different holy oils. The other thing that'll happen at the Chrism Mass, unless they've already done it on Tuesday like they did in Boston and some of the dioceses here in New England, the other thing they're going to do is they're going to call the priest to renew their vows, and that's done on Holy Thursday as well. And I thought I'd look at that for a second. We talk about the priesthood for today. So, again, going back, and now I do hospital ministry, so I was at the cathedral yesterday, and I wanted to get the holy oil that is used for the sacrament of the sick. And so that was important, and that's what I did, after the Mass, and that we'll use for the year. And so that's what we have. So that's some of the stuff that's going on today or happened on Tuesday. The other Mass is the Mass of Holy Thursday. That's oftentimes, although it's not mandatory, that's oftentimes where you will see the washing of the feet by the pastors to some of the people, and you will see that as well. Some people are very strict on that, and others are not, as far as the washing of the feet. So the very strict element is you have to have 12 men to represent the apostles. Others, you have to have 12 people. and others you don't need 12. I mean, sometimes you have a hard time getting 12. I mean, generally, how often do you speak to say, hey, do you want to have your feet washed tonight? It's a very awkward question. So in any case, that's going on tonight as well in those parishes which is almost all of them, but not all, those parishes and worship sites where they wash the feet. So, and you have the whole Mass, and this Mass tonight is a celebration of the very first Mass, which was the Last Supper. So it's a powerful time, and it usually ends, no, it always ends with time of adoration. The Eucharist is reposed somewhere else than on the altar, and people can be in adoration of the Eucharist for usually till midnight, and then they often churches do people do the visiting the 7 churches, so they'll visit 7 churches who are all engaged in adoration. I don't know if that is an international church-wide custom. It probably is, but my first parish where I first saw it was as a priest was in Dorchester, Massachusetts, and at the time there was a church every 5 blocks in Dorchester. I could probably name them all. Let me see if I can do that. St. Gregory's, St. Mark's, St. Anne's, St. Brendan's, St. Ambrose. I'm probably missing one. St. Ambrose, St. Peter, St. Margaret, St. William's, and I know I missed a couple, but they roughly every 5 blocks there was a church in Dorchester. As a matter of fact, it was a neighborhood that was well known. Even if you weren't Catholic, when people ask you what part of Dorchester you're from, you'd say the name of the parish in the area. They're very common. So some of those parishes have been combined since then, but yes, and so to do 7 churches in Dorchester was fairly easy because there's a church every 5 blocks, literally every 5 blocks. So and that's kind of changed a bit. And so these are some of the things that are going on today. And it is today a celebration of the priesthood because even using the oils is a priestly function. That's what the priest does. Use them for anointing of the sick, for baptism and confirmation. And there are 3 different oils. One is the oil of the infirm, and so you'll see a symbol on it, OI. Others will have maybe oil of the sick, it'll say right out, or OS. But the other, it's always something to keep in mind because another oil is called holy oil, which in Latin is oleo santo, so also would be OS. So that's why you may see some that say OI if it's in Latin, which is important because if you just see the initials, you don't know which one's holy oil and which was oil of the infirmed. So OI is usually oil of the sick. OS is usually holy oil, and holy oil is one of the 2 oils that are used in baptism. The first one is an oil that is used for the exorcism that is in baptism. If anyone ever asks you, have you ever been through an exorcism, just raise your hand and say, I have, because all baptisms include an exorcism, believe it or not. So that's used in baptism. And then the final oil is called chrism, and you can study the history of chrism back thousands of years. Chrism is oil that is used to designate priest, prophet, and king. And when someone is baptized or confirmed, they are recognized as priest, prophet, and king, or I suppose we can say priestess, prophetess, and queen. And you may turn over, I guess better word would be monarch. And you might say, well, wait a minute. Hey, I've been confirmed. I'm not a priest. Well, there's 2 kinds of priesthoods. There is the priesthood of the ordained and the priesthood of the laity. They both have a role. This is why I really hate that term. People say, well, I'm just a lay person. Don't ever say that. because you have a special dignity as someone who was baptized. I may disagree. Well, no, I do disagree with many of the online influencers. And I will say, well, what is their authority? And they may not have any authority from the bishop. So they don't have the ultimate authority that would allow them to speak as some of them do. But they do have an authority as a baptized person, but it's not the same level of authority. So people are encouraged to teach the faith, absolutely. You just want to make sure you're doing it correctly. And maybe I can talk about that at another time. But you can't say they have no authority, because everyone has the authority of a baptized person. But certain actions in the church should have the authority of the bishop behind them. And many people online don't. So keeping that in mind. But that's an important consideration. You have the authority of the bishop behind them. And that's important as well. So these are some of the things that are going on today with the blessing of the oil. And then, of course, we have the renewal of vows of the priest, which we're going to talk about in the second part of the program. In the meantime, you're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. We're here every single Monday through Friday, even on Holy Thursday and Good Friday. Yes, we will be here tomorrow. And we're here on your favorite podcast platform. Just remember to subscribe, to like, to let people know, and pass the word. We'll be back right after this. Again, you're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Did you know that the Catholic Audio Media Podcast is available on various podcast platforms? You can find us, among others, on Podbean, which is our home platform. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart, among others. Just look for Catholic Audio Media, all one word. On some platforms, such as Spotify, look for Catholic Audio Media, 3 words, and subscribe and listen to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back. And, so one of the things we're talking about is not only the blessing of the holy oil, but the renewing of the vows the priests do at the Chrism Mass. So this comes from the Chrism Mass in Boston, which was held on Tuesday. So let's look at a couple parts here. The Archbishop in our case, begins with beloved sons on the anniversary of that day when Christ our Lord conferred his priesthood on his apostles and on us. Are you resolved to renew in the presence of your bishop and God's holy people the promises you once made? And the answer is, I am. Are you resolved to be more united with the Lord Jesus Christ and more closely conformed to him, denying yourselves and confirming those promises about sacred duties towards Christ's church, which prompted by love of him, you willingly and joyfully pledged on the day of your priestly ordination, which mine was almost 33 years ago. Okay, so we're looking at, you want to conform yourself more closely to Christ every day. That's our call. So you don't just do it once and say, I'm there. No, a minute. If you ever meet someone who says, I am conformed totally to Christ, run from that person, because it's a lifetime endeavor. But how you live your priesthood, for those who are living priesthood, and that means how you live your Catholicism, is something that is, in a sense, unique to you, because they're all different kinds of ministries, but they're all different kinds of living your priesthood. The mentors in my priesthood were mostly city priests. So and they came from city environments. One of my mentors, who unfortunately died at a young age, he had the opportunity, which he did take, to go down to Peru. I had the opportunity to go down Peru, but I ended up so high in the mountains that I couldn't breathe. So that didn't work. But they had an opportunity to go down. He had an opportunity to go down in Peru and caught an uncurable form of, I don't know whether it was tuberculosis or if it was, tuberculosis or hepatitis. I think it was tuberculosis. A special form of tuberculosis that I think, or some disease like that. And he died from it back here. He came back here in Boston to be treated, and he died. And people inspired by him, who he inspired as a priest before he went to Peru, became doctors in the meantime, and they worked to find a cure for that disease so that it wouldn't do the same thing to anybody else, and they found a cure. So he actually inspired a cure for the disease. But he was a fascinating guy, and he worked in the city, and that means he worked, being a sign of Christ to some of the gang issues going on in the city, which was pretty heavy at the time. This was before what was known as the 10-Point Coalition. But he had a nun, by the way, shows you the vocation of various people. He is a nun. A nun is someone who has made vows, so is a brother. They are technically a lay person who have made vows, and they belong to an order. So they don't have the vows of the priest, but they have made vows. But that means they have the same vows that you make, plus the additional religious vows. Now, why am I saying that? Well, I'm not telling you to do what she did, but you could see, how nuns can be really tough. Well, it's one of my favorite stories. I believe her name was Sister Catherine. She was at one of the T stations. The T is the transit system in Boston, waiting for the bus. And there was a young gang member who came up and tried to rob her. And she just went, "Oh, aren't you bold? Aren't you a bold? You're a disgrace," and chased him away. Not even chased him away. The way she yelled at him, he just ran. That's powerful, because that is the power of Christ working through her. Just kind of, and I'm not putting up with this. I had an experience a long time ago when I was going out to my car, and I was in a frustrated mood because that's the reason why I had to go out to find a vehicle. And I was very angry. I was not in a good mood, okay? So this guy was going to rob me. And you see, I'm laughing about this, but that's the truth. He's going to rob me. So he says, "Oh, I'm security here. I have to check." I says, "No, you're not. This is my parking lot. Get lost." No, I'm security here. Yeah, get lost. This is my parking lot. And now remember, I'm not in a good mood. So I'm not in the mood to get robbed. Not that I ever am, but I'm really not in the mood to get robbed. No, I'm the security. You have to listen, buddy boy. Get out of here. This is my parking lot. So now we get into this fight. The guy's trying to rob me. He doesn't have a weapon on him, which is part of the story. He's trying to rob me, and he robbed me in a bed. Get out of here. You're not security. This is my parking lot. So then he starts walking away. He says, "You're lucky I don't have a gun. Get out of here." The whole bit. So everyone who gets worried about inner city ministry, I'm not asking you to do it, but says, "Oh, no, they're going to get in all kinds of, they're all afraid and have to call the police all the time." No, that's not the way inner city ministry is. But as I was saying, you're called to different styles of ministry. Now, many guys work in the suburbs, which is an important part of ministry. I could never do that. I could never do that. It's just not my style. It's a wonderful ministry. It would be very difficult for me. And you've got to remember, I speak 3 languages, so I'm able to communicate to a lot of people in different languages in the city. But I could never work in the suburbs. It's just not my style. I mean, I could do suburban work, but it would be difficult for me because I'd be more used to the city. So in any case, you've got that. And there are different styles of ministry. Each one is called to unite themselves with Christ. And however Christ would operate in that area, if that makes any sense. And that's what we're called to do, which means we're called to seek to live the gospel in a powerful way. and because our way of living the faith is not just preaching. And it isn't. It's really the style that we're living and everything else. So that's it. So we continue. Are you resolved to be faithful stewards of the mysteries of God in the Holy Eucharist and the other liturgical rites, and to discharge faithfully the sacred office of teaching, following Christ the head and shepherd, not seeking any gain, but moved only by zeal for souls? And that's one of the things we're called to do as well. Our whole mission is to be, is to live in a prophetic way to let people know that Christ is alive. That's what we're called to do. And so we do that through the sacraments, but we also do that in the way we live our lives. Now, I wrote in one of my books how, especially during the crisis, some priests can get very discouraged. And you say, well, they're never around. Well, because they're discouraged. Sometimes you go to a parish. I haven't had that experience too much. I mean, you'll always have something. But I went to a parish. Someone I know went to a parish. He was ordained, and first parish, and they were so difficult to him. He left the priesthood, and that happens too. And sometimes you will find priests that try to do their best, and then they just stay in their room because they tried to do their best, and it just didn't, people didn't appreciate it and everything else. And so they just don't go. They just don't go out. And that's always discouraging to see that, because we're really called to really seek the adventure of living the priestly life. That's what we're called to do. And that's one of the vows that we're called to do. We're going to be back on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast here every single Monday through Friday. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, everything else. We'll be right back. Going back to receive your high school diploma can make a huge difference in your life. Not just for you, but for your loved ones and your community as well. Across the country, thousands of free adult education centers are ready to help with teachers who will guide you every step of the way. Find free and supportive adult education centers near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council and the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. So there we are. That's a look at renewing priestly vows and looking at the blessing of the oil and what is happening today. So enjoy your Holy Thursday. And then, of course, tomorrow is Good Friday. It's interesting because in English we call it Good Friday. And the other, at least the Romance languages, Portuguese and Spanish and Latin and everything else, I think French, it's called Holy Friday, Viernes Santo. Sexta-feira Santo. So it's interesting because tomorrow is known in English as Good Friday, but in the others it's Holy Friday, which personally I think that makes a lot more sense. In any case, so we will talk more about tomorrow with Good Friday and that reality. In the meantime, have yourself a blessed Holy Thursday, and we will see you then.
Yeah, you know the real is back. Father Carl Chaplain from the city of champions, dropping daily reflections coming straight from the field. The raw truth revealed for the strong-willed. It's the Greatest Act of Defiance podcast with your host Father Carl, a message built to last. The Greatest Act of Defiance podcast. That's right, the Greatest Act of Defiance. Word up. Word up. Word up.
The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.